Right. We wanted to check in on the temperature with the Dallas Cowboys. Bob Sturm, the hardline talk show host, he's been there for a long time. The Ticket, afternoon drive from 3 to 7. Bob, kind enough to join us. How's morale there in Dallas, Bob, after the news that Mike McCarthy is coming back?
Well, luckily we practice this just about every year, Dan, so we're pretty good at this. We've been here before, we've seen this episode, so I can't say that the most shocking performance possibly in Cowboys history was that big of a shock if you look at it that way.
Okay, with what Mike said yesterday, did that increase confidence, add more questions? He sounded a little bit more confident, or there was a direction that he was going in that almost like, hey, I'm my own man and I'm going to get us past this threshold.
Yeah, there's some defiance to it for sure
Yeah.
because he takes the slings and arrows like very few other coaches. I think he has a very comparable resume to a lot of guys who have way better marketing departments around the NFL. And I realize being a defender of Mike McCarthy's career today seems like a lonely post for me to be on, but he's done a very good job as an NFL coach, and he's done a very good job as coach of the Dallas Cowboys. And yet, to most, if not all, it doesn't matter. And any of the words yesterday were like everyone just has deflector shields on because they are convinced he's not the one to lead them to the promised land. And again, around and around we go. It's over 10,000 days since Super Bowl 30, Dan, and the natives don't want to hear the reasons they got bounced by the youngest team in NFL history in the wild card round at home when it appeared their road was wide open to at least get to the NFC title game.
Do we know if Jerry Jones reached out to anybody?
Well, I don't. That's a great question for Jane. I don't know, but my general takeaway, Dan, is this. I suspect they did, but I also think there is a group of candidates that would be a clear upgrade from Mike McCarthy who have no interest in working here. And I think that's been the theme for decades.
Mhm.
And it's been because of the circumstances Jerry Jones has set up, partly to make sure everything revolves around him at all times. And we've normalized it here in Dallas, like everybody's just accepted. Like, the sun comes out every morning, it goes away every afternoon, and Jerry's going to keep doing what Jerry wants to do, and there's nothing we can do to change any of those three things. But I don't think Jim Harbaugh would come here. I don't think Bill Belichick would come here. And so when you look at what does that leave you with, Mike Vrabel, Mike Zimmer, whatever Jerry would come up with, I don't know that even he can convince himself that's a better option than Mike McCarthy.
If you said to the fans, you can have a vote on changing your quarterback, changing your coach, or changing ownership.
Wow, that's an amazing boy. That's a good one, Dan. I personally would think I would like to try a new owner. I've been around the block enough times here to say I feel like the next quarterback is going to have a bigger burden than Dak does, and Dak has a bigger one than Romo had. And as far as coach, McCarthy, Garrett, Wade Phillips, Bill Parcells, just keep going down the list. We've tried to switch those guys out. We've seen almost no difference in the results. So let's try the guy who seems to, have the world's, revolve around him. So I think a day will come when Jerry Jones is no longer running this thing. I think his son will see it in a slightly different way, but who can say? But we're reaching around in the dark here, Dan, to try to find the solution to what makes no sense to anyone around here with the Cowboys since 1995.
Are the Cowboys planning on losing their defensive coordinator, Dan Quinn?
Well, that's a great one too. I mean, as you said, everything on Sunday morning was one way, and then by Sunday night it was a different way. And Sunday morning, Dan Quinn was one of the hottest coaching prospects out there. And by Sunday night, everybody's like, how do you sell this to your public that the same guy that gave up 28-3 to Tom Brady and the Patriots in the Super Bowl has now turned around and made the Green Bay Packers look like the most unstoppable offense in NFL history when Jordan Love is making his very first NFL start as a more than a touchdown underdog. How is that even possible? And everybody goes back to, well, it might be because he plays safeties as linebackers and they just get rolled over in the run game by the Niners, by the Bills, to an extent by the Dolphins and the Lions, but absolutely the Packers just looked at the Bills and 49ers tape and said, they've got the same linebackers out there. Let's do the same thing. And the Cowboys were absolutely powerless to do anything about it.
If I talk to you in a year from now, Bob, what's the topic of conversation in Dallas?
Well, I assume it will be a new coach. I don't really have any other way to measure the end of his contract with the expectations here. And the expectations here is we have to figure out a way to get back to at least the Final Four, if not the Super Bowl. Now, if the Lions do it, now you're just talking about two franchises in the NFC with a drought this long, the Cowboys and Washington. It used to be three. Detroit will never get there. Well, Detroit is actually one game away from getting there.
Yeah.
And so the list gets even smaller. Jerry's getting older. The patience is getting shorter, I guess, but that's the weird thing about Jerry. He never seems to fire a guy in a fit of rage. For all of his attributes that are well reviewed. At least we can say he waited way too long on Garrett, and maybe he's waiting way too long on McCarthy. Who can say at this point? But with 1 year left on his deal, the idea that the expectations will go up, but the ability to have as good a roster will go down, competition will certainly get better. I assume they're finding a new head coach, which would lead people back to, well, why don't they just do that right now?
Great to talk to you, Bob. Thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure, Dan.
That's Bob Sturm, the Hardline talk show host on The Ticket in Dallas weekdays from 3 until 7 local time.